Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Stacy Varghese, and I'm the Director of Leadership Annual Giving and Engagement at St. John's University. Today, we have Karen Portnoy, who will explain to us how to turn pain into purpose. Some housekeeping rules before we begin. If you have a question, please submit it in the Q&A section, and they will be answered at the end of the presentation. Now, I'm excited to introduce our speaker. Karen Portnoy is a mentor, healer, and a powerful voice for personal transformation. Karen's journey began during one of the most painful chapters of her life. What could have been a breaking point instead became a profound turning point. Through emotional hardship, isolation, and uncertainty, she chose not to be defeated. Instead, Karen turned inward, embarking on a deep spiritual healing journey that helped her confront her fears, her inner wounds, and the beliefs that once held her back. In doing so, she discovered extraordinary strength, a strength that not only rebuilt her life, but revealed her mission for service. Today, Karen empowers individuals navigating divorce, heartbreak, and major life transformations to rise from their own challenges and encourage them and clarity through many social media outlets, including her podcast. Her work is rooted in compassion, authenticity, and the belief that renewal is always possible. Welcome, Karen. The webinar is now yours. Please unmute yourself.
Good morning. Thank you, Stacy, and thank you for having me, and thank you to everybody for joining us this morning. I'm very excited to talk about this. So I just want to start by saying that the issue that I'm going to be talking about is a very highly toxic divorce that I ended up surviving and now thriving from. My intention in talking about parts of my divorce that are very personal and very painful is not to be a victim at all. It's just to share my story and what I went through. And I'm more concerned about talking about the healing that came from that and rising above everything. So I just want to set that stage because I don't want to come across as being a victim. I don't see myself as a victim anymore. I was at the time. I am now a survivor. So I just want to set that intention. And secondly, I just want to say that while I'll be talking about my divorce and what came from that, whether you're in a marriage and maybe you're seeking divorce, maybe you're not happy in your marriage and you struggle with things like communication or vulnerability or anything like that, it's not just about divorce. So if you're in a marriage that you're not happy in, if you're in the midst of a divorce, if you're on the other side of a divorce, great, you'll really resonate to what I'm saying, but it's not just about divorce or bad marriages. It's life skills also. So anything that I'm talking about, you can think about in terms of your own life and how you can apply some of the things that I'm saying just in life in general. Maybe it's a relationship with a family member or a friend or a job or a relationship or anything like that. It can really apply to more than just divorce or bad marriages. Anyway, so I'm going to get started. There are some 6 strategies that I'd like to go over and talk about that are just wonderful, and I love this. So first of all, the first one is to name your pain, to transmute it to power. And one of the things that I always say, and I really truly believe this, and I've heard it for years, you can't change what you don't acknowledge. So you have to name your pain before you can change it, because if you're unaware of what kind of pain you're in or what it impacts in your heart or your life or your mind or whatever that is, you can't change that unless you like face it and name it, and this is what it is. I actually went through mental, emotional, psychological, spiritual, financial, and legal abuse during my divorce. That was a lot to handle. There was a lot of cortisol, high cortisol levels and PTSD symptoms and exhaustion and all of that that came from that. But I had to name all of that and figure out how this was all affecting me. And it wasn't good. I mean, for 3 years that we were divorcing, we lived together. So I oftentimes could not even get off the couch. I used to be a very active person, and suddenly for 3 years, I couldn't get off the couch. I was in survival mode, and that was it. So it's very important to be able to name your pain, so that you can transmute it into purpose. And it takes time. It's not something that happens overnight. It's something that you really have to get honest with yourself about. And sometimes, look, meditation is amazing, prayer is amazing, and all of that, but some people don't do that. And so then it comes down to just maybe you journal, maybe you walk in nature, maybe you have a pet that you spend time with, whatever it is, something that can make you go within and kind of face your truth about what kind of pain you're in and how it's affecting you. How do you feel it in your body? Things like that. So once you can name it, then you can start to change it. And I would say that most people really do need help doing that if you don't have experience doing that. For me, I've been in therapy my whole life, and I've endured enormous pain in my life, but I've learned, and I've been very self-taught after I've learned so much in therapy, and I've also walked a very spiritual life. So between those two elements, I've been very steadfast in teaching myself how to heal and how to move forward and how to turn pain into purpose. So if you have any questions about this, please put it in the chat and I'll see about getting to it at the end. The second thing is find the moment that everything shifted and then build from there. And I had a very poignant moment that I want to talk about here, because although I always was a spiritual person, um, I went through times in my life when God was more of a presence for me than others. And it wasn't until my divorce was underway and my ex-husband was seriously out to destroy me on every possible level because he didn't want the divorce. And I gave him 8 or 9 months prior to serving him of clear communication, of sharing why I was upset, what was upsetting me in the marriage, things that I needed to change for me to be happier. And he stonewalled me every time. So in 8 or 9 months, I was the only one talking and sharing, but he wasn't participating in that. So by the time I actually filed for divorce, he felt that I pulled the rug out from under him, but that wasn't actually true. But anyway, so once the divorce was underway and I was, experiencing the greatest pain of my life, I was in the deepest depths of despair. There was a massive smear campaign he took against me from, with all of our friends, our community, his family, and our daughter. And it was a very traumatizing experience to be isolated and shunned the way that I was. And so, other things too. There was a lot of parental alienation while we were living together. There were a lot of painful things that were designed like that. He, at one point, he started saying that when he was through with me, I'd be living in a cardboard box. And he would say it in front of our daughter and, like normalize that to her. And it was just terrible. There was a lot of pain, a lot of things that were really set to destroy me. So at one point I kind of like fell to my knees and whispered out loud, God, I need you. I need your help. I can't do this alone. And I continued once a week. I was able to have these long spiritual baths that I would take, and I would pray and I would cry into the bath. And I for hours I'd be praying and tears would just fall into the water until I had none left. And this went on for, like, I want to say about 6 to 8 months that I was doing these baths. And I would pray, I would meditate, I would speak to my mom who had passed away, and I would listen for her voice. I felt her energy around me, like by my shoulder for the longest time. So I knew she was with me, and I felt comfort in that. But I was really relying on God at this point. And it's, after about 6 to 8 months, I started to feel my energy start to shift a little and lighten. And suddenly I felt like I wasn't carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders alone. Um, and the times that I felt that God was most present with me was when I would speak and I would say things that, were either comforting or peaceful or whatever. And it felt like it was coming through me, not from me. And that's when I realized that I wasn't alone and that God was with me. And I learned something very powerful during this time because I know that God doesn't just give us strength. He gives us challenges and obstacles and things to overcome. And so we build strength ourselves. So that was very eye-opening for me because I was very aware in real time as I was watching things happening. I felt like a bystander in a way that I was a fly on the wall looking down at my life and seeing things unfold. Um, so that was a really powerful moment because once I started relying on God and seeing God show up in my world and in my life and my situation, I was so aware that He was deconstructing my entire life right in front of my eyes to zero, like totally zero, only to build me back stronger, wiser, more powerful, more peaceful, and more surrendered to him. So it was a very powerful time when, and I know it says like what was the defining moment, but it was a moment that took about 6 to 8 months. So I was very tapped into God from the get-go, because I realized also that whether you're in a toxic relationship or a toxic divorce or whatever it is, nobody else on this planet can understand what you're going through if they haven't been in your shoes. People go through divorce every day, and every single person has their own unique struggles and challenges and outcomes. And the way that they went from, you know, being married to being divorced and that whole entire journey, everyone has their own unique way of getting through it. So even though I had a couple of close friends that stood by me through it all, and they went through their own divorces too, they couldn't possibly understand what I was going through because they didn't go through my exact situation. So that's why I didn't turn to anybody else. It was a no-brainer for me that the only one who could help me through this was God. And, God sees everything, God knows everything. So I would speak to God as if he knew everything going on because he did. I found at one point that every time I would pray, I would cry, and I didn't understand why I was crying. And at some point, I remember saying to God out loud, I don't feel worthy of you. I don't feel worthy of God. And immediately, as soon as that came out of my mouth, I heard in my spirit, of course you're worthy. You're my child. And of course, that made me cry more. But I got the picture that I was exactly where I needed to be. I turned to him, rightfully so. He was there to help me and guide me like a loving parent, and that was the defining moment. And then once I started moving on from there, um, I would come up with these three principles through my divorce that I was steadfast on. So one of them was I was not going to let my ex-husband break me. The second was I wasn't going to let him crush my spirit. And the third one was I wasn't going to let him close my heart. I have a very big heart, and it's overwhelming at times, but my capacity to love is tremendous. And I was not going to let him take that away from me. So with God by my side and the strength that I was building, I was able to really focus on those three principles to get me through what I needed to get through. So that's number two. Sorry it took so long, but okay. Number three, rebuild while you're still broken. I love this one because I think what I did is not common at all. I started a massive healing journey while I was still divorcing, while I was still abused, while we were still living together. So, to be healing at the same time you're being abused is not common at all, and it's not easy at all. But I have a fire inside of me that, my ex-husband severely underestimated me, severely didn't know who I was to the core, and couldn't, I used to say to him, "What do you love most about me?" And he would say, "Your feistiness." Well, just so you know, the things that your spouse loves about you at the beginning are the very things that they hate about you at the end. So he didn't really count on my feistiness at the end. But I fought back as much as I possibly could, even though I was so drained and exhausted and partially broken. I would say I was broken, but I wasn't really broken where I couldn't function. So anyway, it's very easy to get stuck in a cycle while you're in the midst of a toxic marriage or a toxic divorce, where you kind of spiral around in the same conversation and the same things that upset you or bother you or are hurting you. And it's very hard to get out of these things because you feel very justified, and rightfully so. And, I'm in a lot of divorce groups on social media, and I hear the same question over and over again. Why can't I leave? Why is it taking so long for me to be able to leave or change or, kick them out of the house, or, they cheated on me, or whatever it is. It's a trauma bond is what it's called, and it's a cycle, and it's really, really hard to break the cycle. A lot of people are very embarrassed because they've stayed as long as they have, and I'm one of them. I mean, I was married to my husband for nearly 20 years, and we were together for 4 years prior to that. So, I mean, that's really hard. I spent a huge chunk of my life being with this person and not being happy, and not being, you know, my ex-husband didn't care about my happiness. He didn't ever have my back. We were not friends before. I mean, there were many red flags here that I ignored, and the only way I can describe it is that the unhealed version of me somehow aligned with the unhealed version of him. And that's why we got together. But, there were massive lessons for me to learn from this marriage and from the divorce, of which I have. So anyway, the importance of healing while you're still broken is really the key to get yourself out of that stuck cycle. And as hard as it is, because I mean, geez, you're in so much pain. But it's really important to think beyond, what's happening in the here and now. I couldn't see the light at the end of the tunnel. I had so many divorced friends say to me, "You're going to be okay." You're going to be okay. You're going to see that, this will end one day, and you're going to be great. And I never believed it. I didn't believe it until we were sitting at the table in my attorney's office signing our divorce agreement. That's when I knew it would end. But before that, I didn't ever believe it was going to. So it was important while I was going through this pain and abuse to start healing. And so that was very crucial, and I highly recommend. And again, if you need help doing this, seek help to do it. I can help you. Anybody can help you. Like a professional, a therapist, or a teacher of some sort, or a coach. Okay, so number 4, run into the fire, not away from it. And that was one thing that I did while I was healing. I was like, every single minute I was rapid fire to heal. I was going into the fire head on. What do I need to learn next? What's the lesson here? What else needs to, I mean, I was facing everything. I was facing childhood trauma and inner child wounds and belief systems and attitudes and behaviors and thought patterns and all these things and that were being passed down. I mean, we all have this. All of our ancestors, what they went through generations ago, the pain that they endured in their lives, in their marriages, in their relationships, or whatever, all of those pains were passed down from grandparents all the way down to your parents, and your parents may not wanted may not have wanted to talk about it. And that happens in many families where it gets swept under the rug and nobody wants to address it. But that doesn't mean it's not there and it's not felt and it's not passed down. Lack mentalities, things like that. Um, so I think that, for me, having gone through so much healing and facing so much trying to transmute and alchemize pain into power at that point, I really did break a lot of those generational curses. And there were times I would meditate where I would feel like thousands of ancestors around me, surrounding me and hugging me and just being so proud of me for facing this. So it's really profound when you think about it. It's intense and it's profound, but I'm a very deep person. I'm a very spiritual person and a very psychological person. So I thrive on this stuff. I love, going into the fire and figuring things out and healing and all of that. So I highly recommend running into the fire. As scary as it is, I will say that the peace that you get on the other side of it is worth whatever fear you have going into it. And again, with God by my side, that fear was surrendered immediately because I knew that God would be able to handle this. So I really did relinquish all of that fear. And so happy and satisfied and fulfilled that I did that. So, number 5, turn your wounds into wisdom. I mean, I'm sitting here now sharing all of this because I healed from these wounds. And again, there's so much. I will be honest with you, and you may laugh at this, but I did not prepare for this morning's webinar. I knew what I was going to be talking about, and I trusted and surrendered that God would make me say exactly what I needed to say, whether it's Him talking through me or whether He's just inspiring me with like things in my mind that I remember that I felt are important to say. That's how I speak now. I have a podcast, and when I speak on my podcast, I was just telling Stacy, I pull up to my mic in my master bedroom closet and I talk as if my best friend is sitting across from me. So all of you are my best friends sitting across from me right now, and this is how I've been able to turn my wounds into wisdom. I trust in God, and I know He's guiding me every step of the way. And I love that I can just speak and feel and know that what I'm saying is exactly what needs to be heard right now. So that's how I turn my wounds into wisdom. And then lastly, use your survival as the blueprint for your empire. So I always knew that my podcast was going to be the beginning of something much bigger. It was not just going to be my podcast. It was the starting point. But I felt called to tell my story in my podcast. Episode 1 to 13 is the story of my divorce. And then episode 14, I just recorded episode 55. So all of those episodes are about my healing journey. So I'm very proud and um, amazed that there are so many episodes about healing, but I felt that it was more important to offer hope and inspiration to anybody going through a toxic relationship or a toxic marriage or a toxic divorce, to feel hope and to be inspired to make a change in your life, whether it's getting out of a bad marriage, whether it's, finally divorcing your spouse or healing from it on the other side, post divorce, and creating a life that you love after. I mean, what my life looks like now is insane. And the only way that I can describe it is that, and I'll try really hard not to cry, but I have become the version of myself that my 3 or 4-year-old wished I had always been. And I say that because when we're kids and we dream so big for the things that we want in our life when we're grown-ups, somewhere along the way, somebody in our life, maybe more than one person, shoots down those dreams. Like, you can't do that. What makes you think you can? Or who do you think you are? Or you can't achieve that. Or whatever it is, they stomp on our dreams and we grow up kind of feeling smaller that we can't achieve the things that we wish we could. And I will say, from having God in my life and surrendering so much to Him, I mean, God, I'm just going to say on a tangent for a second, but I'll come back. During my divorce, I was highly dysregulated. My emotions were highly dysregulated. I was out of control and I was so impatient. I could not get divorced fast enough. And for 3 years, I felt this way. And court dates were so spread out and it was just terrible. So for me, you know, being able to regulate my emotions, giving up control to God, releasing control, and then, learning patience, all of those things have freed my life up exponentially that, like, I'm able now to live the life that my 3 or 4 year old wanted for me because the sky's the limit now. God's running the show now. I'm not. When I released control, the weight of the world lifted off my shoulders. Like, we're in such an illusion that we have control over our lives. I mean, yes, there are certain things we have to control. We have to make appointments. We have to do a job. We have to show up at places. We have to go to the doctor, things like that. So, yes, there are things that we have to control. And the things that are within our control, we should participate in. But the things that are out of our control, oh my God, why do we walk around with this on our backs? Because it's an illusion. We have no control. God has control. So as soon as I was able to release that and surrender that, it was like my life became lighter. I became lighter. It was like I could just go outside and be overwhelmed with the beauty of a sunset and cry at the majestic creation that God has made. I mean, that has happened more than once. I connect with animals, I connect with children. Like, I didn't do any of those things before. So I felt like having God in my life really meant that I could enjoy life. Excuse me 1 second. So enjoying life now really is about being in the moment and being present. I think I mentioned this on a TikTok reel I did recently about really mastering the balance between past, present, and future, which is pretty important because, we spend so much time ruminating about the past and going over all the things that hurt us or shaped us or anything like that. And then we don't really spend so much time in the present because we're anxious about the future. So, which hasn't happened yet. So we're planning and we're thinking and we're, trying to figure out where we want to go in our future. So we're very deeply rooted in the past and the future, but not so much in the present. So by letting the present go, letting the past go and letting the future go, I've been able to just be in the present every day, in the moment. Yeah, of course, there are things that I think about and dream about for the future. And the more I think about it, the more I know I'm manifesting it. But um, I really have let go of so much of the past. It's like it's over. There's nothing you can do to change the past. You can learn from it. If you're going to look back with curiosity and discovery and try and use it to help you grow, then it's productive to go to the past. But for any other reason, it's not helpful and it's not productive. So I highly recommend living in the present as much as you can. Take in every moment as much as you can. Just be present. Um, you know, I recently moved to a new place, and let me just tell you, changing your environment is so crucial too. I mean, if you have the ability to do that, financially or whatever your situation is in your own life, maybe it's not the right time or for whatever reason, it may or may not work for you. But even if you can't move to a new environment, you can step out of your environment and go somewhere new. So for me, I spent a lot of time at the beach. I would walk on the beach, and my best friend has a private beach, so I would go there. And oftentimes, especially off season, I would be walking on this beach by myself. nobody else was on this beach. I had the entire beach to myself. And by the time I stopped, I think I was up to about 10 miles, which is huge for me. And especially on the beach, which is harder to walk on. But I would sit on the rocks, overlooking the water, and I would pray, I would meditate. I had visions of, while I was actually sitting on the rocks, I would imagine my inner child, like my inner 4-year-old, and I'd sit on the rocks cross-legged, and she would be, energetically, she would be sitting on my lap facing out, and I would hug her, like I'd have my arms around her, and we would just be together, just the two of us. And the love that was exchanging between us was so powerful. And I remember there was one time I said to her, "What do you want to do tomorrow?" And in my spirit, she answered, "Play with makeup." So I spent the next day playing with makeup with her, energetically, of course. So, there are some really powerful things that happen when you can be in the moment, and I highly recommend that. So, I think it's time to wrap it up, I think. So any questions that you have in the chat, I would be happy to answer, whatever we have time for. And I just want to thank you all for being here, and listening and staying. And if there's anything that I can answer for you beyond this webinar, Stacy has all of my contact information, and you can reach out to me any which way you feel comfortable, and I'd love to connect with you. So thank you again. I'm going to disable my mic, so Stacy, you can have it back. Thanks again, everyone.
Thank you, Karen. Okay, so I do actually have two questions that I see coming in, and I think I see some people typing. The first one is, even with the deep healing you've done, are there times when old thoughts or feelings from the painful chapter come back? And how do you support yourself through those moments? If you
I
can
love
unmute.
that question. Yes, I love that question. Of course, I'm human. Everybody's human. Everybody has setbacks and regressions at times, and it's totally fine. It's normal. It's natural. You acknowledge it for what it is, and you feel what you have to feel. You transmute whatever you can in that moment, and then you let it go, and you just keep going. So it's sometimes it's painful to revisit old wounds, but again, when you face the fire and you just, you look at it head on, it, I, re, y- it's easier and faster to heal it when you do that, because the fastest way out is through. I remember my therapist told me that. It's so true. So as painful as it is, it's the fastest way to get to the other side of it. So yes, that happens. I deal with it and I move on. Next.
Yep, the second question. Can you share a bit about your mentoring work? You mentioned that you do that. How do you mentor individuals? Is it one-on-one? What does the process typically look like?
Okay, I love this question too. So I developed a mentorship program where I mentor clients one-on-one. It's a 1-hour session once a week for 8 weeks, and I have a whole developed program. So we go through step by step how to go from A to Z. So you can contact me separately. We can talk about what that entails within the program and whether it's something that you think is right for you. I felt it was very important to offer this because I wish I had someone like me. I wish I had me when I was going through it. So I would like to be that lighthouse for everyone else going through it. So I hope that answers your question.
I think so. And I just put in the chat all of Karen's, the ways for you, if anybody wants to contact with her, get in contact with her or view any of the things that she does, like her podcast, I put it in there. But I think we're good. I don't see any other questions coming in. So Karen, are there any last thoughts or anything you would like to share?
I just want to say that, we live one life here, and I just think that we need to just make the best of it as best as we can. So anything that I can do to help, I'm here for you. I keep saying that, I'm here to help, to guide, to teach. I've been through so much, and I wouldn't, excuse me, I wouldn't be qualified to do this had I not gone through it myself. So really and truly, I feel like I have a lot to offer in every area that I speak about because I've been there. So I hope that helps, and I'm here if you need me.
One question did sneak in. How did you start your empire and how did you keep on growing?
So I will say that a lot of it had to do with, these big dreams from my childhood. I think that there was a part of me that wanted to be famous or thought I might be famous one day or something, but I have a lot of projects in the works right now that are lighting me up so much from the inside. So that's how I know that they're meant to be because I feel so energized by it. And a lot of things that are outside of my comfort zone, a lot of things that are scary. But what I've learned through this whole process is be scared and do it anyway. I'm in my era now where I say yes to everything. I mean, not recklessly or carelessly, but if something feels right to me, I say yes to it immediately, even if it scares me. And it has served me very well. So, um, I've been through a lot, and that's what qualifies me because I've healed through it to be able to help you. So I hope that helps.
Well, I want to thank everyone for joining us today, and obviously a very special thank you to Karen for sharing her journey and her story. For Karen's complete bio, please go to www.stjohns.edu/APD series, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Thank you, Karen.